Okay, so we are going to talk through the text of to end this unit, the Mishnah and the sugya that follows. So first, here's the Mishnah. Um, there's a Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanakama's position is very straightforward. It's Rabbi Yehuda's position that is somewhat confusing. So we're going to focus on that. The Tanakama gave us a very plausible reading of the parents being together, right? They have to both agree to do this particular thing. But Rabbi Yehuda gives us this other broad, vague notion. His mother has to be Ru'uya le'aviv in order for him to be Ben Amoreh. She has to be fitting for the father. We can come up with, and hopefully you did come up with, a range of guesses as to what he might mean by that. But the reason you come up with so many is because it's really not clear. Is it about whether they get along well? Is it about what kind of couple they are? Who knows what it means? Okay, so that's our Mishnah. Now, in order to follow the Gemara, we need these definitions, right? Chayav karet is just, one is obligated in this punishment, but things that are chayave kritot are acts, in this case, types of relationships that are forbidden and would get such a punishment, right? The point is these categories of marriage are invalid unless the parents are not technically married. Okay. Now, here is the first half or so of our sugya. Now, the first thing we need is to see what are the key terms. So, what are the key terms? Well, we know my. What is this? Okay, that's one. The second one is elema. It was on your worksheet as a frank term, and if you looked it up, you would find that it is a key structural term. Okay, sof, I gave you on the sheet, is another sort of key structure term that structures this argument. Ella, we've seen Ella before as introducing a certain type of statement. Tanya, we know in this case it's a phrase. Tanya nami hachi, that introduces a certain a breita in a certain type of context. My ta'ama is again a key term that introduces a certain type of statement. And finally, di amar kra, which is an answer to the my ta'ama statement. I probably can put a little question mark in there. So, what I've done is, without talking at all about what this sugya says, by identifying the structural terms, I can tell you a whole heck of a lot about what's going to happen. First, my. We can ask a question. Ilema. If you look at Frank carefully, that is a tentative answer to be rejected. So we have a question. We have a tentative answer. Sof is going to be a rejection of that answer. So, question, proposed answer, rejected. Ella, we've seen it before, I think, offering an alternative, better answer to the same question. Which means that what's coming after Ella is ignore what came in the last two lines. Ella is an answer to the question in the first line. Tanya Namihachi is a Breita, but specifically a Breita that is going to support an idea we just presented. My Tama, what's the reason? Is asking a question about that point. And Di Amar Kra, as the Torah says, or it's from what the Torah says, means we are going to give an answer to the question based on a pasuk, in this case, a midrash. Okay? So, question, potential answer that we know is going to be rejected. Rejection. Second better answer, Breita that supports and, in this case, elaborates on that answer. Question about that answer, and response to the question that is based on a pasuk. Okay, that's just structure. Now let's talk about the specific content. Okay. My einaruya. Here's what's tricky about this. It's not just in what way isn't she fitting. It's really that those words einaruya should sort of be in quotes, even though it's not a precise quotation of the Mishnah. What it's asking is, what did Rabbi Yehuda mean by this? Okay. What would it mean for Rabbi Yehuda to say, and the imo is not ru'ya la'aviv? And that's what we're trying to understand. What did he mean by it? Now, first answer, because remember, we already saw in the Mishnah that it's not at all clear. And in fact, it's difficult to come up with a really strong, a really sort of, good answer to that question. So the first answer that the Gemara offers, Elim, if you want to say, if you suggest that the answer is this, well, that's going to be a problem. So what's that? If you say that the meaning of a not ruya is she wasn't permitted to him, she wasn't allowed to get married to him, so why is that a plausible answer? Well, first of all, it is instant literal. Maybe she is a person who's simply not fit to marry him, not permitted to marry him. Now, why might we think that has anything to do with the Ben Sura Moreh? Well, presumably because if they weren't allowed to get married, and it's this type of prohibition, they're not actually legally married. Maybe if they're not married, technically, then they can't do this. Okay. But in the end, which is another way of essentially saying, nonetheless, and here's where you get into this key phrase that is gonna sort of that we need to do. Avua ninhu, ime ninhu. If you fiddle with the word order, you get his father's his father, his mother's his mother. What's the point of that? The point of that is to say, doesn't say anything in the psukim about their being married. It says something about them acting together, but it refers to them as his mother and his father. So they could act together whether they're married or not, as long as he's the father and she's the mother. Okay, we're going to pause there, and then we'll do the rest in the second piece.